Welcome to the Awakened Goddess Show, your source for inspiration, wisdom, and personal discovery. The place to learn from a diverse mix of mentors, metaphysical experts, spiritual leaders, and best-selling authors from around the world. I'm Angela Wilkinson, mindset mentor and founder of the Awakened Goddess Academy. Join me as I explore the minds of my masterful guests while they share powerful insights and easy-to-use tools you can start using right away. Now, let's tap into the energy of the Awakened Goddess and be enlightened by today's guest. Well, welcome, Tanya, to the Awakened Goddess Show. I'm super thrilled to have you joining me today to talk about one of my favorite things in the world, and I know as yours as well, crystals.
Crystals! Yeah! Party on!
I know. Who knew that, like, something from Earth, these sparkly little things could just make one person so happy?
I know. Yes, and many people happy.
Yeah. So
Thankfully.
we're going to dive in and talk about, you have some great knowledge and experience because you worked with a mentor for 8 years, a shaman who helped you learn the trade. So why don't you just give a little background information about that and how you came upon this love of crystals?
Oh, thank you so much for having me on the show, first of all. I really appreciate it, Angela. It's going to be so much fun. I always tell people that I pretty much was born in rocks. I really love them. I grew up in a kind of rural area of Minnesota, and there were times when we would just wander the gravel roads and find agate after agate. And I think my parents used to tell us that just to get us out of the house, like, go look for agates.
Yeah.
And it worked. And to me, it was always this incredible feeling of discovery to just be walking along and there's, thousands of rocks that I don't like. And then all of a sudden there'd be one that just jumped out and was beautiful. And I'd be like, agate!
Yeah.
And it wasn't until, I think I bought my first actual, like, quartz crystal when I was like 16. So I was very drawn to that stuff even at a pretty young age. And then, I worked with some healers who like to work with crystals in my 20s. And then I began an apprenticeship with a shaman here in the Portland area. And he really worked with crystals and stones in a very big way. Mm-hmm. And so that was really wonderful because I already had an affinity with them. And then it was wonderful to work with someone who had this wisdom about it and also this very calm approach to it, and so that really resonated with me. And it's kind of funny when I think about it too, because it wasn't until recently that I put together that my grandfather on my mother's side worked at mines.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And it is kind of a thread that I think is a little bit in my genes. And it's been wonderful to be able to get to explore that deeply, look at how crystals are used for healing and teaching, and how the magic that's present from just the discovery process that people are offered whenever they encounter a crystal, whether it's in a store or out in the world. Mm-hmm. I think that same discovery process is always available.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like once you discover your first crystal, it's like Pandora's box is just opened up. And then it's like you find this whole other world. Yeah. And then it's just this curious journey into this unknown, magical place.
Yeah. And what's wonderful, I think, about that is how much that mirrors life and spirituality and metaphysical processes and energies, because whatever approach I might find myself taking to the discovery of a new kind of crystal or a new kind of mineral, it probably is going to mirror for me how I approach anything else in my life, Mm-hmm. So if I approach it with, oh, that's wrong, or that's weird, or, it's offering me a reflection. Okay, what's going on that I'm rejecting that? Or if I approach it with awe, there's sort of okay, well, what's happening that I'm able to feel that deep sense of awe, Mm-hmm. So to me, I think that moment of encounter, in a lot of traditions, Buddhism and shamanism and Druidry, the moment of encounter is that really special moment. Mm-hmm. And so for me, I think it's great because crystals are such a sort of non-consequential way of playing with that moment. You know what I mean? Whereas if I play with it with a stranger I meet on the street, or with a beloved, or with a pet or something like that. There can be different consequences for playing with that.
Yeah, definitely. And every crystal is unique.
Yes, for sure.
It's like, and there is that resonance that you feel with some of them. So let's talk about that.
Yeah.
So do you communicate with the crystals, or how do you work with them? I know you use your musical abilities and
yeah. For me, it's taken a while for me to admit this, but it's basically about hearing. Like, and I think that for me, that's a lot of the energetic work that I do as well, is about sort of sensing and hearing and feeling. You know, and a lot of people have different gifts, and I definitely see things as well. But you know, when it comes to picking up energies or crystals, a lot of it for me is I might hear something about it, or kind of start to feel through the vibration of sound what's happening. And when I first started to admit this, there's a thing in crystals that you have that's called an anhydro, and it's where a crystal has been growing in its pocket. So they grow in these little pockets in the earth. And I do have a geology undergrad, so I can kind of nerd out on this stuff.
Okay. No, I love it.
But you know, they grow in these pockets, and what happens is there's all this process going on around the crystal in the geology, right? So the lava has come up through the earth, and it's putting pressure for everything to reorganize. And that's where you end up with different kinds of geology. And part of that reorganizing process is all of the vapors and minerals and liquids get pushed further and further and further into these little pockets, until finally they have to crystallize, because they don't have anything else they can do during the process. And so there's vapors in there, and sometimes a crystal grows so fast that it traps an actual water bubble in the crystal, and you can move the crystal and see the water bubble. And there's certain places in the world where this is famous for happening, like Tibetan crystals often have anhydros, moving water bubbles in them. And there was a time when I purchased kind of a big bulk of Tibetan crystals from someone, and he told me, he said, there's lots of anhydros, so you better, you know, look through there and find them. And it's kind of hard, because they can be tiny bubbles, or they can be lots of stuff in a crystal. And eventually, though, as I was going through them, I figured out that it was almost like I could hear the bubble move, you know? Mm-hmm. And when I first thought that, I was like, that is crazy.
You're like, you're just making this up. Come on.
How could anybody possibly hear something like that? Like, first of all, it's just a tiny bubble, and then it's buried in quartz. So I kind of just was like, and this is my approach sometimes to metaphysical stuff, where I'll feel it or sense it, and then I'll have this reaction to it that's like, that's crazy. Right. And then I'll be like, oh no, wait, settle down, like really something's happening. And so I finally, and it kept happening, where I'd hear it, and eventually I'd look and I'd find it. Mm-hmm. So one time I heard this crystal, I was like, oh, it's got an anhydro in it, but I couldn't ever see it. I didn't ever see a bubble. So I kind of left it out for myself as this sort of reminder that, you know, okay, yeah, I can trust my senses a lot, but sometimes I might not always get it right, you know. Mm-hmm. And I'd pick it up every now and then and look at it and just hang out with it. And about a year after, you know, I first encountered this crystal, I was looking at it one time in the sun, and I found the bubble.
It just appeared.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why it took me so long or whatever, but it was a real validation that whatever that sense is that I translate as hearing is definitely a way that I can communicate with crystals. And I think it's because of their structure, they do resonate so intensely with any interaction. And that's a lot of what music is too. You know, you can hear music from extremely far away, still feel it in your body, still know it's music. Or if you sit on top of a bass drum, you're going to feel that. Mm-hmm. And for me, crystals and minerals are like that. You know, sometimes they might be really quiet, have a really quiet energy from far away. And then sometimes it's like sitting on a bass drum, you know, depending on the crystal.
Is it more about the type of crystal or just the crystal itself?
Well, as you said, I mean, they all have their own personalities. And some of them are tender and quiet. Some of them are more masculine or feminine. Some of them are more feisty.
Ooh, what's the feisty crystal?
I actually really think that the Oregon quartz crystal the Oregon Infinity quartz, which I've been very lucky to be able to dig and hang out with and sell for my shop, are very feisty. They're playful and feisty, and they're full of a lot of vitality. And you know,
almost an example, like fairy energy, maybe.
Yeah, they're definitely in the best sense of that, you know, and they definitely, when I'm working with them, if I'm washing off the dirt or something like that, it is really common for me to clean one off and kind of hang out with it, and then put it down, grab another one, and then look, and it's not where I put it, you know.
You moved right into a question that I had,
Sure.
and so that's awesome. What when crystals break or disappear,
Yeah.
what's going on there? Magic?
Yes, for sure. And I would say that so this gets into something that I really believe strongly, which is that crystals have their own journey and agendas that they're on. You know, each human,
Yeah.
we have our own too, you know, and we do whatever, and when we think of ourselves as having a lot of will and choice. And I really believe that crystals are the same way. Now they rely on us for certain things, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So that Oregon crystal, when I took it to my house and I washed it and I set it back down, it might have been like, this is awesome. I'm now able to do this, which is disappear from a human's vision, right?
Yeah.
And to me, it's kind of a portal moment where they're entering into a portal. They're showing me and others that the boundaries that we see of the physical reality aren't as fixed as we might think they are. And so they are able to move between those realities in ways that, you know, I get to watch and kind of play with, you know, in meditation and in other ways. And they show the ease of that. Also, if they, you know, so that's what I think when they kind of disappear. Now, if something breaks, you know, sometimes it can be emotionally really sad for a person to have that happen.
Yes,
Yeah.
I have an example of that.
Oh no.
And I showed this crystal to you at the Portland Body Mind Spirit Expo.
Okay.
And I don't know if you
Hello
remember.
again.
I was asking you, yeah, I was like, what is this? So it was about 3 times this size.
Mm-hmm.
And at one of the other booths, there was a little sign that said, this type of crystal is great for healing tumors. And that same week, my dog we had taken him to the vet, and he had like a large, like baseball size mass, and it was like a fatty tumor is what they diagnosed as they checked it out. And then so I saw this sign, and so I put this around his neck in one of those little cages.
Yeah.
And after about 3 weeks, it broke. And actually the size of the tumor has drastically, like probably 70% decreased.
Wow, that's great.
So, but I was so sad because this crystal was about $30 when I originally bought it. And then the other pieces got lost, and I was like, oh, I love you, Colby, but where's my crystal?
I know. Yeah. I know that feeling. I've totally had that happen, and I've seen it happen at my shows, you know, when I have crystals out, and you know, a child, the best is if a child breaks one and this look of terror on their face, you know, and I'm always like, it's all right. You know, my policy is I don't put anything out if I'm so terrified it's going to break. I just can't do that, you know, because how would you even be in this business if you're, you know, just so afraid all the time? What I say about things that break like that is that, you know, at its essence, a break is a release, right? It's an energetic release.
I love that.
Yeah. And that one of the things that crystals are great at doing is fracturing. You know, they fracture on perfect lines because of their perfect molecular structure, and that can be difficult to witness. It can be difficult spiritually to kind of understand. But to me, I don't ever see it as a very depressing sort of loss, because it's more of again, an opportunity where a crystal might reflect to me, hey, I needed to transition in this way. I'm gonna, you know, if you think about it, what is sand except for all these broken crystals?
Yeah, you just have more crystals now.
Yeah,
they're
exactly.
just smaller.
And then the great thing is I always tell people, you know, crystals and rocks are on a time scale way bigger than any human can imagine. And the time scale for that crystal might be, okay, now I'm broken, but in 5 million years, it could be part of Earth again, that then again creates crystals and again creates itself into a perfectly formed crystal again, you know. So for me, it's one of those opportunities to look back on the bigger cycle. And in the story that you're telling, I think it's beautiful. It seems like the crystal was really working in this way, and then it was just doing its work, is what I would say. And sometimes it sucks to be like, I spent this much money on a rock, now it broke. It's not you know what I thought it was, and
it was worth it though. I swear, you know.
Yeah.
And it was funny because even during that process, it did get lost. It fell out of this cage
Uh-huh.
into the grass. I had to go hunting for it. It
And you
definitely
found
had a
it?
mind of its, yeah.
It's
It
great.
did have a mind of its own. But I want to
Yeah.
get back to the feisty Oregon. Oregon. You
Okay.
said Oregon agate, right?
It's Oregon quartz. It's
Or
Oregon
Oregon
Infinity
quartz.
quartz. Hmm.
Do you have a sample you can
Yeah,
show us?
yeah. This is a decent one. Let's see if I can. Oh, there. I don't know if the
Mm,
camera's gonna focus on it or not.
yeah.
So these are basically what you can see about it right away is that it's got these kind of cloudy parts.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if the camera would show, but these are basically internal structures that are kind of lines. Sometimes people call them Lemurian lines
Uh-huh.
that are
Uh-huh.
on the outside as well as on the inside.
Cool.
Do you see this little extra point
Yes.
right here?
Yeah.
So the Oregon Infinity Quartz has been through this process of formation where it basically didn't have just one pocket form at any one time. There were multiple kind of events that created crystals and then broke them and created them again and broke them again. And that's where you end up with this kind of self-healed bottom like this. I don't know if you can see in my camera well enough, but there's all these tiny little points, and sometimes people call that a castle point, where it basically at one point was on a base, but then because the geology heated up again and the forces were created again, it broke off and then grew new ones.
Mm-hmm.
So these guys have been through so many transformative processes.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, they just have this playful vitality about them. They have, these really different terminations that you just don't see from other localities. And people who practice Reiki, people who work with energy at all, and people who just really like rocks have really been responding to these in really beautiful ways.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one I dug myself up in the Cascade Mountains.
Wow.
And they kind of range in size. Like here's a kind of one of the bigger ones right here.
That would be so much fun to go and dig, because I too, thinking back when I was younger, I was very much like you. I'd go scavenging and looking in. I was in Prineville doing at the time.
There's a lot of stuff there.
Yeah, and it was just like finding little bits and pieces, and yeah.
Yeah, and I always tell people you can go. There's lots of places to go look for crystals and rocks here in the West Coast, and some of it is if you have a local rock club, if you don't feel comfortable kind of going out on your own, there's a lot of local rock clubs that have field trips that you can just join for not very much money at all, and things like that. And I definitely, if people are curious, I definitely encourage people, because first of all, it gets you the chance to have that magical moment of seeing a crystal in the woods. And when I sell at events, one of the things I try to do is make the crystals look like that. So I'll put moss all around, and because sometimes that's how I find them, is they're just sitting on a piece of moss,
Mm-hmm. Wow, really? They just are sitting on a piece of moss.
Yes.
I love that. Did you hear about the recent on the coast all along the Oregon, and I don't know how far north
the
and
agates.
south? Yeah, how they just kind of appeared.
Yes, because
That's
of the
amazing.
And actually, that's a really cool dynamic. We don't know all the possible localities for rocks and minerals on the earth, and she's constantly offering us, kind of new material. And I think that's a really beautiful thing to kind of listen for in the metaphysical world as well. Is okay, well, how come this particular material came to the world at this time? And you might take a look at, something like the Brandberg quartzes, which are these really dark amethyst or else really clear crystal with a little bit of amethyst.
Yes, I saw on your Etsy store that one is like amazing. I was like, oh, look at that, shiny. Beautiful.
Yeah, I have a couple here. This is like a kind of classic smoky amethyst. It's very dark because of the amethyst and the smoky in there. And this is like a classic, like what Brandberg has to offer. And these are super powerful healers, the Brandberg quartzes. I always, if someone is dealing with any sort of major health issue or loss of some kind, a Brandberg is an incredible catalyst for that particular person.
Ooh. Now, is that where it's from, Brandberg?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's something to talk about really quick, is just I think because of my geology background, I still have this habit of talking about things based on where they come from. And then that's often how they're sold. So like if someone, Brandbergs are from Namibia, a locality in Namibia, Africa. To me, it's important to know exactly where something comes from. You know, it's part of what I learned during my apprenticeship with Shannon Kelly, the shaman that I worked with, is that sort of understanding the source of something, you know, and having that be a part of the work is looking at, okay, what are the sources for this material that I'm working with?
Yeah, totally makes sense.
Yeah, we can't always know, you know, but at least for my business, part of what I'm trying to do is say to anybody who comes and asks me about something, you know, for this material, I can tell you where this is from. And that way the stream is just that much cleaner, you know. And Brandbergs are a material that kind of started to be shared worldwide just within the last 10, 15 years, you know, and when they came to the world more broadly than just the locality that they're from, you know, people were just really in awe at their kind of ability to heal. And so in that sense, I call them Brandberg, but they're also an amethyst. They're oftentimes have smoky qualities. So then that's sort of describing the type of stone. So there's the locality name and then the type of stone. And then sometimes on top of that, people add a metaphysical name or quality. So
what would be like a metaphysical name?
Well, like the Super 7 is actually a
so
name.
I'll show you. Yes, we'll pull it out. So
look at that.
Super 7.
Yeah. And people can see it's got that kind of chevron shape. It's you know, that little, I don't know how to describe it, but like an upside down V. And then you've got these different bands of color kind of as you go up the piece from one side to the other.
Yeah, and this one too has, I think, maybe a little bit.
Yeah, that has it even more clearly. Yeah.
Get in the light.
Okay, so technically the mineral name for that material is coaxinite. That's what they call it. But that's a lot less handsome of a name.
So the whole thing is called coaxinite?
Yes.
That's so not sexy.
I know. But Super 7 is way better.
Yeah. Super 7.
So that's like a metaphysical name, and it's been given that name by the person Melody, who does a lot of stuff with crystals and quartz, and we call it Melody Stone sometimes. And that's basically when a piece is sort of discovered or said to have particular qualities. Sometimes people kind of assign a metaphysical name. Same thing with like the Murrian crystal, you know. I don't know if you've ever heard that one. But.
Yes, please talk about that, because I think that's when I've actually been, it's kind of like a aqua.
Well, Lemurian crystals, from my understanding of it, it describes a kind of crystal that has basically these kind of striations. I'm trying to see if I have any that would be obvious on camera, but it has sort of parallel lines all the way up either one side or all sides of the crystal, and depending on sort of who is discussing the qualities of those, you know, some people say that they're basically a kind of record of knowledge from ancient cultures. Some people say that by, you know, connecting with those, you can kind of read them, you know, in meditation or something like that. But in geology, we would just call those striations. Right. You know? Sort of like, and to me, I don't see those as opposing at all. Yeah. You know, I know some people do, but to me, it's just language to describe sort of what people are seeing or what people are working with in the stone. And I'm a big embracer of, you know, however people want to explore what the crystals have to offer.
So that brings me to a question about, there are amazing books out there with, like, you can look up crystals and it'll tell you all of these metaphysical properties, and I mean, it's amazing. How is it that one crystal can do so many things, and then on top of that, how do you address like information that maybe is conflicting when you look at a couple different sources?
Yeah, I think it's it strikes me as a little bit of a newer thing in humanity that we're trying to like map out exactly what crystals and minerals do. I mean, obviously it's ancient in the sense that, you know, people used to say that amethyst would help draw out poison, so people made cups out of amethyst, you know. So there's an ancient one, you know, there's an ancient tradition of finding mystical and also practical kind of healing qualities of Oh, like you had fluorite, that beautiful
Yeah.
fluorite you showed
See,
me.
where is it? I'll pull that back out.
That is exactly what we brush our teeth with. And you obviously wouldn't brush your teeth with that beautiful specimen, but it's the same
Yeah.
mineral. So there's a long-standing practice between humans and minerals. But then I think it's kind of newer that we're looking for ways to describe, hundreds of minerals and their metaphysical properties. And I think that whenever that happens, it's kind of a newer thing. There's lots of information out there, and it can be information overload, and there can be conflicting information. And I think that one of the things I always encourage people to do is to do some research, learn about it. But there are no rules really.
Right.
And I think that if people were raised like me in the United States, and I was a person raised in a Catholic tradition, which has a lot of rules about spiritual things.
Yeah.
And so it can be difficult for people because when they're branching into something like what's a metaphysical property of a crystal, they sometimes I see this a lot. They don't want to get it wrong, quote unquote. They don't want to get it wrong. And I always just tell people, take a deep breath, and if in your heart and in your spirit is resonating with this particular crystal, then that is absolutely the one for you. Regardless of whether on a piece of paper it says that crystal will do this for you. Does that make sense?
Oh, it totally makes sense. And
yeah.
And I'm wondering because of, crystals are made of crystal.
Yes.
So crystal is programmable.
Uh-huh.
Right?
Yeah.
So I would think that regardless of what it supposedly does, that you could, with your intention, really program any crystal to do whatever you want. Is that right? Or
well, I know that that's a lot of how people approach crystals, is this concept of programming them, and it comes down to basically the idea of kind of a parallel between like crystals and computers. That somehow that it's the same idea that and like you were saying, the molecular structure, and then also just spiritually they're kind of clean and all that stuff. And it's not really the approach that I take. I'm not a programmer of crystals. I'm more.
That's too much work, right?
I don't know that it's necessary, I guess. I feel that the crystals already sort of are programmed in this sense. And then the approach that I take is, if it's in my life, there's a purpose for it in my life, And what I want to do is deepen my awareness to what that purpose is in service to me and to the work that I do and to the beings in my house or in my life. I can kind of give you an example. Sometimes I like to play with ordering crystals online from China.
Oh, yeah.
I know that for those of you out there who order crystals online, they're probably shuddering right now because most people try not to order from China. It seems like it's a gamble, basically.
Okay, before you go into your story, please address, that, and where are reputable sources? Like, how would someone know where to shop? And then I want to hear your story.
Yeah. Okay, so the reason that there's sometimes, so basically because China's a powerhouse in a lot of ways, there's people all over the world people from China are all over the world, digging minerals and digging stuff. And so sometimes you can get incredible stuff from China, for sure. But then they also have just some material that comes out that's been modified in ways that results in kind of false advertising. So they will dye crystals green and call it a green crystal and send it to you and charge a certain amount of money. And I don't even know that it's nefarious in any way on their part. I think they're just seeing that you can sell stuff on eBay and they're like, if it's on eBay and people buy it, and why not? Yeah. And people in the US sell green crystals as well that are dyed. So it's not just China, but I think that there's a little bit of racism around that. I'm not sure. But the other thing is that there's more of a chance to find stuff that's been irradiated. So you can take a clear quartz crystal, something that's as clear as, and people from Arkansas do this too. So this isn't just China, right. But you can take a clear quartz crystal like this. This is from Arkansas.
Wow, that's really clear.
Yeah. You can irradiate it, right? And it'll come out very black. But that's
it'll look like smoky quartz?
Exactly. Oh. But it's not actually smoky quartz in the same sense as you know, like here's a kind of traditional like Brazilian smoky quartz, right?
Yeah.
And one way you can tell whether it's been irradiated or not, or whether it's natural, is that there's a differentiation in the color through the crystal. So you can see in this, actually this one's a better example. So like seeing this big guy here, there's
Yeah,
kind
you
of
don't have any small crystals, do you?
I do. Remember the Brandberg? That was small.
Yeah, I'm just teasing.
I know. It takes all sizes, Angela.
I know. I'm so jealous right now. Size
We should
does
definitely
matter.
talk about that. Yeah, but you can see how the color varies.
Oh my God, I
varies.
could see my reflection in
I
that.
know, look at that, and that's wild. So
Whoa, that's cool.
clear at the top, and it's gray at the bottom, and there's different sort of colors in it.
Yeah.
In an irradiated quartz, it won't be different like that. It'll be kind of black all the way through, or else black and then very clearly white in one area. So very like clearly
Yes.
So that's one way that anyone out there can tell the difference. And you know, energetically and stuff, I don't know that it's not terrible if I have an irradiated quartz that someone did. People are doing stuff to quartz all the time to play with the energies available in that. The aqua aura quartz is one where it's basically
Is that the one with gold that they?
Yeah, it's like titanium that they cover it with titanium and then they fire it and it turns blue and it's beautiful.
It
and,
is, yeah.
Yeah. So there's all these ways that people are playing and doing things, but China kind of gets this bad reputation as being like scammers.
They get the short end of the stick about everything.
I know.
Dog food.
Shout out to the China listeners out there.
Yeah. We love you.
I know. So I actually have gotten some of my best pieces by ordering things from sellers who are working in China. And what I always tell people in terms of ordering online is to look for how much information is available about the piece. Like, what do they say about it? Do they give you the size? Do they give you where they got it from? Also is just price. Like, basically, I think it's important to be willing to gamble with your money, right? So if there's a piece that's $50, are you comfortable knowing that it might not look exactly like you think it will when you get it? You know?
Do they kind of show one picture and send something else? Is that
that
what?
can happen? That can happen. The other thing is when you're ordering online, is to be sure to look for language that says this is the exact one you will receive, or one that says this image is just a proxy. You'll get something.
Yeah, this is an approximate photo of what you will get.
Yeah. But people do that all the time for polished pieces. You know, if you get, polished fluorite, for example, at a shop or something might just put 3 pictures up there and say, this is like what you will receive. Because a lot of the fluorites are similar, you know. Anyway, so those are some things to look for. Look for return policies, all that stuff about shopping online. But I do think it's possible to find incredible pieces online for really good deals. And just, knowing that it's a little bit of a gamble, for some overseas vendors. But some of my best stuff has come from that venue. So
yeah. So what was it? You had a story about that. What was?
Yeah. So I found this really beautiful smoky quartz from Tibet, and it just it had this really interesting quality about it. It wasn't very, beautiful in the traditional sense, like the Brazilians I was just showing, but it kind of had this, like, I don't know, this thing about it. And I was like, So I bought it. Yeah. And when it arrived, I realized that it basically, it has this, and smoky quartz is known for clearing, for the ability to clear and kind of draw out negative energies. And for people who haven't worked with smoky, that's one of its strengths, is that the idea is that if you have a smoky quartz around or with you, it's going to help kind of draw out whatever is considered negative in the day of your life or in a house or in your relationships. I mean, you can ask for help in different ways. I do believe in that. So I don't program, but I definitely can ask. I'll ask things for help. And I'll listen for what a particular stone's purpose might be based on its energy. So this crystal, for example, as soon as I held it in my hands, I was like, whoa, this guy is not to be trifled with.
Yeah.
And I haven't ever felt that with this stone, where I was like, I basically became very aware that it was not one that could be touched by everybody in the world. Like it had such a big clearing energy, and it also came a little traumatized,
Oh.
And sometimes that happens.
What happened?
Well, I'm
Like,
not sure.
did it say it was traumatized
Well,
or?
usually it's more, I can tell because of its kind of this, it'll have this little cloud over it, or
Really, it has its like a little aura.
yeah, it'll have a little like sad rain cloud sort of,
Oh.
or it'll be very dull or kind of dampened, just like a person. If a person's sad,
Mm-hmm.
you can picture them. They're just like kind of self-contained,
Yeah.
and maybe they don't want to do anything, and as opposed to like a very extroverted person who's happy and is just like alive.
Yeah, like this crystal. We were looking at it on camera earlier, and it's
Oh
like
yeah,
so. This
very
is a happy crystal. Woo!
sad at all, and it likes being famous now too. It's very
Yes.
happy for attention.
It's 2 seconds of fame.
Exactly. And so for me, whenever I get a crystal like that, I feel like I need to do a little caretaking for it before I can fully tell what its nature is. So with that one, I just put it in a very quiet, kind of dark spot for a while.
Mm.
And every now and then I'd check on it, and every now and then. And eventually it was like, I'm done, I'm ready. I'm ready to I'm ready to come out. And what I did is I sat with it, and what it showed me was it's like a like nuclear bomb. Like the thing can just like clear, anything. And
I think I should have you over to my house
we could bring it. Yeah.
because the sage isn't quite, cutting
Yeah.
it sometimes.
Exactly. And that's what this guy is for. That's all that he's for. And I have it in a very special spot in my house where not a lot of people see it, not a lot of people interact with it. And it's still on the outside is very unassuming. And I think things like that are things that, I think even if I put it on my table to sell, nobody would even look at it because it's hiding.
Yeah.
And
Well, it takes that right person. Because it's
yeah,
like, yeah, it's just fascinating how when you can walk by a table and something just catches your eye, and it's like this almost obsessive like call.
yeah.
Take me
Have you had that
home.
experience? Have you had that
I
experience
did.
yourself?
I
Yeah.
had that with this fluorite that I was showing
Oh
earlier.
yeah.
It was just
Yeah.
like I saw it, and I had to go back
Yeah.
and yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's that moment to me that is so wonderful because it does mirror what happens in our lives sometimes, right? Like might be walking along and a new person begins to talk to us, and I might say to myself, "Oh, I'm tired and I want to talk to some random person."
Yeah.
But then if I actually am able to stay present, I get some really beautiful piece of wisdom from that teacher in that moment. And to me that's the beautiful part of listening to that call. It doesn't always mean that someone has to buy the crystal, but I'll see people all the time walk by my table, and I'll see people just walking by like they don't even care about rocks, and all of a sudden they'll just stop. And they turn their heads and they look and they grab something off my table and they'll sit with it for a while. And because I'm intuitive and I can read a lot from people, I can see sometimes when there's like a conflict internally in them in terms of like, well, this is really wonderful, but I don't buy rocks, or but I don't want to spend money, or you know what I mean? And and it's interesting to watch that moment because it's sort of like this opportunity for them to explore that on a deeper level. To if it's a $5 thing, I would tell people it's $5. It might be worth it, to see whatever is coming alive with you in that moment. Take that home, and then see how it makes other things come alive for you in your life. Like I'm curious for that fluorite. Do you feel like there's anything that's opened within you or within your home different as a result of having it?
No, it just I every time I look at it, there's something about I don't know if it's like an honoring or it was just like a desire I had and I fulfilled it, and so I honored that desire and
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And now because you've done it one time, and not just with the fluoride, but because you've had that whole experience of like having something come alive for you just in a flash, right? And then kind of seizing on that moment, taken it all the way through. Now you know what that's going to feel like in all kinds of other areas of your life, you know. Yeah. And to me, that's the power of the crystals and the minerals is, like I said earlier, kind of giving us this opportunity to practice that encounter. And then deepen it, of course, for people who work with meditation or with healing and all that stuff. But, you know, it's basically, we talk about guides, and crystals are guides, you know, in a physical form.
So I want to come back to that. But first, going back to when you brought that crystal arrived and you put it in a dark place to kind of give it some time. Yeah. So what is your thought on cleaning crystals? Because, you know, that seems to be really popular, to clean them or put them out in the moonlight or, you know, different things.
Yeah. I do get asked this question a lot. And it's another one of those things, like you were saying, where if you Google it, cleaning crystals, you'll see 100,000 different.
Put it in rice. Put it in.
Exactly. There's so many things. Let your dog lick it. I mean, there's all kinds of things, you know. And again, because I believe that crystals are, you know, in their essence, they don't need anything from us. You know what I mean? They are happy if we take them to travel and we take them to do things and we take them into our homes and whatnot. But mostly, if we kind of leave them be, they will reset to whatever is their nature. It's very rare that there's a crystal that has an energy attachment that's not its own. You know, unlike people, we have these energy fields that, you know, we can very easily take on, you know, an energy from somebody else or have an agreement with someone else that takes our energy, or, you know what I mean, that we're not conscious of. I mean, it's usually not agreements we're conscious of. But crystals, you know, because, you know, if you just even think about how they're structured, you know, in such a clean and such a precise way, there's not room for clutter in that same sense. And that said, I have come across a few where I really felt like that one I was describing, something happened to it. It needed time to resettle itself. And people sometimes themselves need a kind of ritual to connect with the crystal. And in those cases, first thing I ask people to do is just kind of sit quietly with the crystal, not touching it, just kind of sitting, or the rock, whatever it is. And, you know, just take a couple breaths and make sure that they're connected to their core, to their heart, to their spirit, to the divine, to the earth. And in that kind of quiet moment, say, okay, crystal, what is it that you need? You know? And a lot of times you'll get a message, you know, just some sort of image. I advised someone to do this earlier this month, and she told me that it just wanted to go in her pocket and her jacket and hang by the window.
Yeah.
So she did that, and then it was really different. And, you know, and then if someone feels that they're not able to kind of get a message, and that can happen too, you know, then I think the go-to is always, like you said, setting it out in the sun, depending on the material it is. Setting it out in the moonlight overnight. Well, you know, watching out for temperature changes and things like that, which can actually, you know, just sort of physically alter the crystal. A little bit of salt water, leaving it in some sea salt, and then washing it. So, you know, I think that one of the things that I struggle with in this particular part of the world that I'm in with metaphysical work and crystals is that, you know, people will come to me and say, oh, well, if you do this to your crystal, it'll ruin it. You know? And I'm sort of like, really? Like, do you really think you're going to ruin the crystal? Like, or, you know, or they become very convinced of things, and it's not, you know, like I had this man come to my table over the summer, and he was convinced that I was ruining my crystals because of how I had laid them out in a row, you know? And he was talking to me, and he was like, see how you have them laid out? That's going to zap every single one of them out. They're going to be ruined. He was going on and on. And then he was telling me about how he likes to crush crystals. He crushes them up to release their energy, and then he puts them in his garden.
Oh my gosh. Like, that's not going to...
Well, to each their own, right? Yeah. Like, I'm sure it works for him, and that's great. Wow. You know, and anyway, so he's like talking about how, like, my crystals don't have any energy. And then he picks one up, you know, and he goes and he picks this up, and he just starts to, like, he gets this, like, look of awe, and he just like is on fire, and then he starts to giggle. And he was like, oh, these aren't zapped. And I was like, oh, I don't know, I guess not. So I think
that's funny.
Well, and what I appreciated that he was open in that moment to feel something different than he'd been taught. And he'd just been taught something by someone. Mm-hmm. And so in general, what I say is if someone is teaching you to be afraid, or if someone is teaching you that you're doing something wrong, there's probably more an error in that teaching than there is in anything that the person is doing. Does that? I don't know if that makes sense, but
no, it makes sense. I mean, they're thousands of years old. I mean, they did fine without us coming along. I'm sure they would have been fine if we left them alone. So we probably can't do much to them. To really.
But what we can do is we can create sometimes like, really intense structures around them, or really intense ways of sort of using them as tools and things like that. And, I think sometimes that's what people want to do or feel called to do. And I support that. I totally support that. And then I just say that doesn't mean that just because I create a structure that works perfectly for me doesn't mean that that's the structure that you would need,
Are you talking kind of like crystal grids or?
Yeah, exactly.
So let's talk about those, because I know that those are popular amongst a lot of the people community that I hang out in. So
Reiki, any Reiki workers really use crystal grids for very particular purposes, and what I see about that is it's basically like it's like creating a library, and we talked about this earlier in terms of like a starter kit, and I think that's a great function, and it's not a function that is a rule necessarily, because it's more like a recipe. If I want to make cookies, I need butter and sugar and flour and chocolate chips, of course.
Mm-hmm. Lots of chocolate.
Yeah, but someone else can make a cookie that's gluten-free and dairy-free, and it's still a cookie. I'm using a kind of long metaphor here, but I am a writer. So I guess that's what I see is when people are using crystal grids, they're basically trying to work with something that allows them to do something else. It's like a catalyst kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people use, you got to have your kind of clear crystal and the different grids. There's all kinds of different grids that I've seen.
Yeah, like the Flower of Life, the Metatron Cube.
Exactly. And that's like almost a meditative practice, to find the ones that are going to work and to put them on there, and then to, so I think those are great if people are working with that. And to me, that's a little different than, more intensive sort of that concept of programming, or it's more that you're practicing a structure to kind of harmonize things and to see what that feels like when you do, and that can be a great way to begin working with crystals for sure.
So it seems like it all boils down to how it feels. Like when you're selecting your crystals, when you're working with your crystals, when you're communicating with your crystals, when you're laying them out, whatever, it really comes back to that intuitive communication and just being with the crystal and just allowing whatever guidance that you get. That's the right thing. Is that what it comes to?
Yeah, and here's the place where I really encourage people to have some sort of practice to help them connect with their intuition. And crystals are a great way to do that. A starter kit is a great way to do that. Also, purchasing crystals where it says something like you did, where it says good for tumors or things like that. Mm-hmm. That can be a great way to start too, where you just, you get a hit about, oh, I might need this. And then you take it home and you discover later that, there's a reason that you really need to have that particular piece. So the getting back to the intuitive sense, I know there's a lot of folks in the world who sometimes feel confused about that. Like, well, is it my intuition, or is it my ego, or is it some other part?
Am I just making it up?
Yeah. How many people have felt that way?
Yeah.
So, and that's where, having a practice, I think is really important. And even if it's a small thing, even if it's just, like lighting some sage or a candle or some incense and spending a minute of quiet, those are powerful moments that can create bigger clarity over time, you know. And also finding a crystal, if you set the intention, I'm looking for a crystal that's going to help me identify my intuitive self, you know. And who knows, you might find it next week. Someone might give you a present of it. Someone might, you know, so I do believe in that as well, of like you had said earlier, kind of setting an intention around them, which to me is a little different than programming, but just setting an intention of what you were looking for. And yeah, and I definitely, as you can tell, I'm not a fan of kind of right and wrong. But I do coach people. I coach people. You know, a lot of people. I invite people if they want to send a message to me and they say, "Hey, this is the thing I'm feeling about. You know, here's the situation in my life. I'm looking for some catalyst energy around, or some foundational support around, or whatever. You know, and these are the stones I'm drawn to. What do you think?" Or what crystals do you think? And I give advice for sure to folks. I'm not a person that will say you need absolutely this crystal. I could probably make more money if I did that.
Yeah. So, and I understand. So you can say you do free consultations about pairing someone with a crystal. So I'm wondering if we could play, and if you could, you could read me or do an assessment of what crystals would like to join me.
Right now, all your crystals right now are like, hey, we're right here.
Well, that's fine. I don't need to necessarily get new ones. I just So I'm curious about a couple areas.
Yes.
Romance, you know, the typical ones. Romance.
Yeah. Yes.
Money flow.
Yeah.
And then expansion to like the next level.
Yeah, right on. Well, let's see. I don't have a ruby with me, but ruby is really awesome for any sort of romance. And ruby, I think, is really great for either initiating romance in your life, or else if you're in a relationship, you've been in a relationship 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, ruby is wonderful for basically kind of keeping that lovely burning ember passion, right? And I have a bunch of rough rubies that I always carry with me or share with people. And rough ruby, it doesn't look like the jewel ruby, you know. It's kind of hexagonal, and it'll be kind of a pinkish, a light pinkish, and they're just very sweet. And to me, rubies are really excellent for that kind of romance and passion. Other things that you can think about for romance as well is anything that's a twin. So there's a feature in crystals that's called a twin, and I don't think I put any out. Well, this is kind of an example. This is like a on steroid example.
Okay.
I shared it earlier, but you see how there's these these points right here.
Yeah.
So if you're a person that wants to have a partner, like one single kind of partner, having something like this around basically kind of generates that quality of paired partnership and shared passion. So these kinds of twins. There's also other kinds of features on, for example, like this cluster has this effect where you see how there's kind of this like V shape. This is a mini version of something they call a twin flame, but a true twin flame would I'm
looking at all my crystals.
Do I have that? A true twin flame would be just these two pieces and maybe a little bit around it. So this is more of a cluster. Clusters are great for family too. So if you have a family that you're wanting to build with your partner, and it doesn't, I always tell people, it doesn't mean with kids necessarily, right? Like me and my spouse have been together almost 10 years, and we are a family, you know, just the two of us. So anything.
Well, you and all your crystals.
Yeah, they're definitely family. So anything like this is great for that kind of, not, you know, romance generator or partnership. So twins would be the thing. And anything really that's purple or red, I think is great for romance.
Yeah.
And then for money, people always go frequently to amethyst.
Really? Because I always hear citrine.
Yeah.
So
Citrine is
amethyst.
great. I have some smoky citrine. And citrine is great for abundance. I think about that. So for me, money is about abundance, you know. And so there's different ways to approach that. This is a smoky citrine from Zambia. It's a rough citrine. A lot of citrine that you purchase in the world is polished. And
yeah, I have this one up here.
is it polished?
No.
Ooh, look at that. That's really nice. That's a nice piece.
Thanks.
You got the whole like outside.
I can't remember where I got it.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's lovely. Yeah, so you see the citrine is and then this is a different expression of the same thing. And amethyst, you know, the sort of the deeper purple.
Gorgeous. Oh, that's beautiful.
It's as big as my head. No, just playing with the aspect ratio there.
Yeah.
So because of the history of amethyst with like royalty and that kind of thing, I very much think of it as an abundance type stone. The other way that it works in terms of abundance, and your citrine piece is a good example of this too, is all of the different points together. So part of what people want when it comes to money is for it to be abundant.
Yes.
And that's all its little, hi, other crystals are saying hi. I know, right?
Kizzy.
So that's part of what is common when people are looking for that kind of abundance around money is anything that's a cluster, you know, something that's going to grow and give the sense of growth. Sometimes I'll encourage people to get something green for abundance as well. This works more for, I think, health, vitality.
Oh, pretty.
But this is a chlorite quartz, chlorite coated quartz. You can see the green is the chlorite, and then there's these clear points as well on there. And then there's some albite.
Oh, cool.
So there's some people who say with things like money or abundance, or even in sort of health abundance, if you can have more than one mineral on a piece, that's like attracting. It's a quality of attraction. So again, with money, what people want is a flow, but also attraction. You know, and attraction to stay together, because you don't want the flow to always just keep going and get out of your life. You know, you want the flow to attract.
Yeah, so having the two types of minerals, you said that helps with the abundance.
Yeah, the two or more minerals.
Yeah, cool.
Because it's basically discounts. Sometimes with money, it's tough to either have it or to not have it, right?
Or it flows right through.
Exactly. And you know, some of it, our lessons that we have around money are about learning how to be with it in that flow, you know, and having a crystal that has more than one mineral on it has kind of learned to play with others, you know, like it's got like that one that you had where it had the pyrite and the,
I was just going to show this. And is this good because it has the pyrite, that it is good for money, or?
Yes. Yeah. And you've got it all together in one spot. So you've got the pyrite, the crystal, and then I think is it galena or is it hematite? I can't tell what the black is. That's great.
Yeah.
So
cool.
Metaphysically, people say there's abundance clusters and things like that count as an abundance cluster, or your citrine for sure. Yeah.
And then what about the expansion, like just up leveling?
I mean, really, that's a lot about the energy of a particular piece. And there are certain areas that are kind of famous for that quality. So for example, this is a clear quartz crystal point from Nepal, and like the green one I just showed, they're both from the same region in Nepal, the Mount Ganesh. I'm not sure, I don't know how to say it. I've heard a few people say it and then I always forget. But they're hand mined at 23,000 feet.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And you know, the Himalaya mountains, they're the fastest growing mountain range on the planet right now. And they rose up from underneath the ocean, you know, so they know how to go. They've gone from deep kind of all the way up into the sky in a very short period of time. Wow. And so I always think of, if someone wants to go to another level, so to speak, part of it is, okay, well, what's the process that's created the crystal? you know, and definitely this guy knows what that's like, you know, to go on another level. And that's one of the reasons why I really like to carry these and work with these.
Wow. I need to get
but
one
you
of those. That's gorgeous.
A kind of smaller scale version of that, it would be something like a clear quartz point from Arkansas. This is a clear quartz point as well from Arkansas. And these guys have a lot of kind of young in age, sort of young vitality energy. Sometimes I like to hold these guys next to each other to kind of show that. But their quality is very different, even though they kind of look the same, you know.
No,
they've been through different.
That one's very wise. The tall, thin one.
Yeah, and this guy's like your younger brother or sister that you really think is awesome, but so this guy will do something for you for sure. These are great for overall clarity, and if you're facing, let's say you're in a practice of meditation or of energy work, and you feel a little bit like you're hitting a ceiling, you know, these kind of guys can be perfect for pushing you over the ceiling. This one will be more like a lifelong kind of teacher, you know, like, hey, I'm going to sit with you. You're going to help me see in a whole new way on my heart level, on my mind level, on my spirit level. So again, in terms of going to the next level, it kind of depends. If someone feels actively blocked, you know, these smoky quartz are really good for that. These kind of Brazilian smoky quartz.
Those small little dainty.
Yeah. As big as my head. You know. Other smaller ones that I have, I just, you know, I wanted to be able to make sure people can see them.
That's right. No, I love, I love big raw crystals.
One of the things, this is an Organ Infinity quartz. And these guys, what I like about them is, I would actually argue that they have the same kind of quality in my experience as this guy.
I can see that.
Yeah. So even though it's kind of tiny and quiet in appearances, you know, if you work with this little powerhouse right here, you can see he's got a little phantom in there. See how there's that darker kind of white and then the clear tip. A lot of the Oregon Infinity quartz has internal phantoms like that. And one of the ideas, when I say phantom, so there's like physical qualities that a crystal has, and geologically speaking, it's formed that way. But then metaphysically, we take that same word and we might describe the metaphysical quality that feature has, right? So the phantom in there has been kind of grown over. And what it helps us do when we work with a phantom crystal is look at our shadow selves. Like, where is it that I have sort of covered over some part of myself? And maybe it's my shadow, maybe it's something else. And how can I see that more clearly? And usually if we bring more love to our shadow selves, it's a huge catalyst for growth, you know, and it can be really uncomfortable to do that, you know? I don't know about you, but I've definitely, I've done in my life where so anyway, so phantoms and a lot of Organ Infinity quartz have those, are beautiful teachers for loving and for clarity around that. So
super cool.
Yes. So I want to take it to the next level.
Yeah. Awesome. Great suggestions. So, you mentioned a starter kit, like what, for a new crystal person, someone that's really just having that first moment of, ooh, I think I want to, you know, start getting some crystals. What would you recommend? What are some really good basic starter ones?
Well, for sure the amethyst, anything amethyst, like a small amethyst cluster. It doesn't, I've showed a big one, but you know, I have small ones that are, you know, more like this size. This is a different kind of, this is the Ontario amethyst.
Oh, that's gorgeous.
Yeah. So something this size is great for a starter kit. And if you get one from Brazil or Uruguay, you know, I'll sell ones this size for $5, right? So it doesn't have to be a huge investment. So
I'm coming over shopping right now.
All right, no problem. Yeah, well, I'm gonna be at the Body Mind Spirit Fair again in April, and then and I love to show people stuff, and I've thought about having some private showings, so maybe we can hook something like that up too if people are interested. Would be fun. Yeah. And then the other thing would be any sort of clear quartz, you know, whether it's you know, like the Arkansas quartz, you know, like this, or even you know, a small little Oregon quartz or something. Any sort of clear quartz, I think, is really important for people to have when they're starting out. And the amethyst will give you this kind of love, and then the clear quartz gives you a kind of clarity and vitality.
And then what about maybe a grounding stone?
I was just going to do that.
Oh, good. See, I read your mind.
This is pyrite.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I didn't know that was for grounding. That's awesome.
Yeah. Pyrite is great. It is formed, when it was originally formed by lava hitting water. So, and when it forms in these kind of sandstone environments, it's also one of the first places where life can grow around it. So that's one of the reasons why I think of it as a powerful protective stone. In that it doesn't just like cast a bubble around you or something like that, but it just clears, it creates this clearing. And for me, in order for people to be grounded, there has to be clarity, So this is a great grounding stone and great for that sort of protective quality of clearing. And then anything that's the fourth one, I would kind of leave open for people. And I would say, usually some sort of green stone can be really wonderful to add to that starter kit. So I would, suggest something like a greenish serpentine, like a polished piece, or, some of these Himalayan pieces that I sell, they're a lot smaller and stuff, but this like a chlorite for vitality, basically, of physical grounding and vitality. So jade can be something like that as well. So those would be the four that I would say, and I think it'd be possible, to get all four of those decent quality, for under 20, $25, something like that.
What? Oh my gosh, that's amazing. I know a lot of people that are going to be calling you up.
To spend a lot more if you wanted, but I think for a small starter kit, it'd be fun.
Yeah. And then just really briefly, what is your take on raw versus polished?
I think that some polished things are beautiful, and it's just what a person prefers. I don't tend to sell a lot of polished stuff, but that's just more because I like to dig stuff out of the ground and I think they look awesome. So I have a bias.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I avoid like the polished stones unless I'm just gonna carry it around or something.
Well, or I would say, people, there's some beautiful, like you showed me a polished piece earlier. It's really lovely, and
did I?
Yeah, the clear one that you got at the craft store.
I know, crazy. Yeah,
it's beautiful though, right? That's been polished and cut actually, and I think the basically what's happening is that piece came from like a really large block of crystal. You know what I mean? And then they created these pieces out of it.
Okay, so let me ask you: this was actually cut? Like it didn't come.
So the sides, if you look at,
are they just too perfect? Is that what you? Oops.
I don't think it's too perfect. I don't know that the tip has been cut. I can't say that the tip has been cut, but the sides look kind of cut to me. And if you look at the bottom, yeah, that's a cut. It's not uncommon for bottoms to be cut, but do you see how there's kind of these beveled sides?
Yeah, like right here.
Cuts. So what that does is that's just like a what am I trying to say? It's like a genre. Like if there's romance novels and history books and cut, I think of cut crystals as a kind of genre, and polished crystals. And I think it's wonderful. They have their own magic. They have a kind of more of a sort of purposeful tool kind of feel, I think, because someone has created them that way, and so there's definitely sort of schools of thought about those as having a very particular kind of energy and power. And I would say great, and it's not a lot of what I offer, but I would not put a value in terms of better or worse,
just preference.
Yeah, exactly. They're just going to do different things. So again, I think if people are really drawn, I've seen some, they had some pieces down in Tucson where I just was, where it was like huge cut and polished, beautiful crystals, and the crystal is like, look at me, man. I am looking good.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I think that's great. Whatever I would say to answer your question, this is people's preference for sure.
Yeah. And then for the more advanced crystal addict like me,
Yes.
like what would you recommend? Like what's a really maybe unique or something that they could add that would just kind of like
Pop.
catalyze or
Yeah, for sure. I think the pieces that are catalysts for people and sort of beyond the starter kit, the kind of next level, would be anything that comes from a more rare locality, you know, or else something that has a particular metaphysical quality again. And if someone comes to my booth where I'm selling, they will see that I have individual crystals listed as something like self-healed, for example. So this quartz crystal, if you see the bottom is all, there's like a bazillion points on the bottom. So this is called a self-healed crystal. I was kind of talking about that earlier with the Oregon quartz too. So sometimes for someone who's more of a, looking to go on another level, I ask them, is there a quality that you want to bring to your life, you know? And someone will say, well, I'm kind of working through some trauma from my life. And so I'd say, okay, a self-healer is going to be a perfect for you. But there's self-healers come in lots of different kinds of crystals, you know? So that would be not about locality, but about quality of the crystal. Cool. But in terms of locality, something like the Brandbergs or anything from Nepal, the Oregon quartz crystals, and then certainly some of the stuff coming out of Ontario is pretty cool. I actually think labradorites are pretty good for next level work like you're wearing.
Yeah. Ooh. Yeah. Yeah, cool. All right. Oh my God, this was amazing.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been great talking with you, Angela.
I mean, this was just like, oh.
I know, I feel that too. That's awesome.
Yeah. So, and then I know you're offering, you do the free consultation to help partners pair someone with a crystal. And then you're also offering 15% off of for the listeners and the viewers. So that's awesome.
Yeah. Just if someone wants to look at the stones that I have available on Etsy, and you can just use the coupon code Awakened Goddess.
Awakened Goddess. Yeah. Very cool. All right. Well, yeah, you guys definitely have to connect with Tanya because she is, as you can tell from our conversation, a wealth of knowledge. And I could just talk to you for like hours. And oh my God, we're going to talk more later.
Please, I'd love to. As I said, I can talk about this stuff for days, probably. Yeah. I love it too.
Awesome. Yeah. So, and now for you, my gorgeous goddess, was there something from the show that resonated with you? If so, we'd love to hear about it. Head on over to today's show page at theawakenedgoddess.com and leave us a comment. Did you enjoy this episode? If so, subscribe on iTunes and please share it with all of your friends. And if you want even more incredible resources, join the Awakened Goddess community to get bonus content from the show. And until next time, goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
And now for you, my gorgeous goddess. Was there something from the show that resonated with you? If so, I'd love to hear about it. Head on over to today's show page at theawakenedgoddess.com and leave me a comment. Did you enjoy this episode? If so, subscribe to the show on iTunes and please share it with all of your friends. And if you want even more incredible resources, join the Awakened Goddess community to get bonus content from the show. And until next time, goodbye, everyone. Okay. I was so excited to talk about, crystals.
Yeah, me too.
When you said, oh, you can get like a starter kit for like $20, I'm like, what? You're going to have people calling you. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Awakened Goddess Show. I hope you enjoyed today's guest and got something you can start using in your life right away. For more spiritual insights and to listen to more episodes, subscribe to The Awakened Goddess Show at theawakenedgoddess.com and discover wisdom that'll change your life.